Okay, we're going to go through a number of problems dealing with integers, both positive and positive and negative rational numbers, as well as some inequalities that we can graph on a number line. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a problem. I'm going to ask you to pause the video and give it a try on your own. And then you can unpause the video and watch as I go through each one of these problems. So the first one that we're going to start with is an expression with two integers, negative 17 minus 11. So pause the video right now and see if you can come up with a response, and then unpause it when you're done, and I will continue going over this problem. Okay, by now you have given this problem a shot. If you did it correctly, you started with negative 17, and maybe you used a number line and you started way to the left of 0 at negative 17, and then subtracted 11 from there. Now what's interesting about this one is that we're already, let's try using a different color there. We are already at negative 17, right? That's below 0. So if you were using a number line, that's a horrible number line, but anyway, and if this was 0, your negative 17 might be way over here. And that's where you would start, and then you're subtracting 11, so you're going to continue to go that way. Negative 17 minus 11 would be negative 28. So let's just write that down here. Negative 17 minus 11 equals negative 28. Okay, so that's how we would solve that using a number line. You can also consider that negative 17 is 17 units away from 0, so its absolute value is 17. And if you're subtracting 11, you're going further away from 0, so the absolute value is just going to grow. So it's kind of like saying 17 plus 28, but you know that you're going in the negative direction, so your answer is going to be negative 28. Okay, let's look at the next one. This one is a comparison. We are starting with negative 0.45 on the left, or negative 45 hundredths. And on the right side is negative 4/5. Pause the video now and see if you can decide if this is equal, if one is greater than the other or one is less than the other. Okay, now you have had a chance to pause and then unpause the video and give this one a shot. Let's see which one of these is greater than the other. Now, if you're like me, you like to round to if it makes anything easier, and this one does. When I think of 0.45, I think that's awfully close to 0.5, which is 1/2. Now this is negative, so if I want to compare this, I might change this negative 0.45 to negative 0.5 rather, as negative 1/2. And then negative 4/5 is really close to negative 1. So there's negative 1. Now, I know that negative 0.5 is much closer to 0 than negative 1 is, so that means negative 0.5 has a greater value than negative 1. So it should be greater than. If you wanted to use a number line, you could have something along the lines there. I'd put my 0 way over here to show that negative 0.45, and here's, if we want to call this negative 1, right? Negative 0.45 is going to be somewhere around here, just almost at negative 0.5, and then negative 4/5 is almost at negative 1. So that shows the difference there. All right, let's check the next one. Negative 0.6 plus negative 2.3 equals blank. Pause the video now to give this one a shot, and then unpause it when you're ready. Okay, let's have a look. Negative 0.6. That's below 0, so we're starting at a negative value. Then we are adding a negative number. That means our value is going to get actually more negative. It's going to decrease and go further away from 0. So if we look at the absolute value of negative 0.6, that's 0.6 away from 0. The absolute value of negative 0.6 is 0.6. And if we look at the absolute value of negative 2.3, that's 2.3 below 0. So essentially, by adding two negatives, we are adding values below 0, getting further away from 0 on the negative side. So let's look at what that might look like on a number line. Here's a number line. I'm going to put 0 right here. And oops, that's supposed to be a 0. There we go. And here's 1, negative 1. Here's negative 2. Here's negative 3. Okay, so if we want to put negative 0.6 on the number line, that's a little bit more than halfway from 0 to negative 1. So we'll start there. That's our starting point. We are going to decrease in value 2.3. So we're adding negative 2.3. If we were just adding positive 2.3, we would go to the right, but we are going to the left. So our value decreases and gets further away from 0, 2.3. So here's 1, there's 2, and so now we are, when we went one space, we went from negative 0.6 to negative 1.6. And when we went two spaces, we went from negative 1.6 to negative 2.6. Now we have to go that extra 0.3. We end up with negative 2.9 would be the complete distance. Now, if you were to take the absolute values of those and add them together, 0.6 plus 2.3, you would get 2.9. And knowing that this is negative, you want to make sure you have that listed there. Okay, so the answer to this is negative 2.9. Let's look at the next one. Okay, these we have to order: negative 3/4, 2 1/3, negative 1/2, and 12 halves. We're going to order these from least to greatest. Pause the video now and see if you can do that on a piece of paper on your own. All right, let's see how you did. So we have these 4 values, and we have to order them from least to greatest. And we see that there are 2 that are negative, so those are going to be the first 2, but we have to decide which one goes first. Negative 3/4 or negative 1/2. Negative 3/4 is closest to negative 1, which means it's further away from 0 than negative 1/2. So if I want to place these all somewhere on a number line, if I have 0 here, and if this is negative 1, then I'm going to have negative 1/2 is going to be right there, and negative 3/4 is going to be right there. So negative 3/4 is going to be our first value from least to greatest. And then that's the only other one that's negative is negative 1/2. And then we have these other values, 2 1/3 and 12 halves. So 2 1/3 is a mixed number. We know that if we were going to put that on the number line, we'd find it here, 1, 2, here's 3. 2 1/3 would be right about there. And from there, we have to compare that to 12 halves. Well, if we simplify 12 halves, that's just a division problem. 12 divided by 2, that equals 6. So we know that 6 would be way up here. And we know that's going to be our greatest value. So our next one here would be 2 1/3, and then 6. Let's see what the next one is. All right, so this one is interesting. X minus negative 12 equals 27. There's two things we can do here. We can find the value of X. That's kind of an algebraic equation that we may not have much experience working on, but we might be able to conceptualize it if we examine this problem completely. And we may not have to actually use algebraic techniques to find out what X is. But before we do that, let's try to write a member of a fact family and see if that helps us solve this problem. Pause the video now, see if you can write a fact family member or a related equation to this one, and then see if you can find out what X equals. Okay, so you've paused the video and you've given this a fair shot. Let's see if we can understand what it means first. So it's X minus negative 12 equals 27. We have a negative 12, we have X, and we have 27, and we want to rearrange those and write another fact family member. That was one of the things we decided we were going to try to do. So let's write one that starts with 27. 27, and then we have to do something with this negative 12. Do we subtract negative 12 to get X? Do we add negative 12 to get X? Or what should we do? So if we want to find out how to get to X, let's try to simplify what's been written here. We know that when we subtract something negative, we actually increase in value. So making this equation look a little bit simpler, we could actually rewrite it like this. There's our X plus 12 equals 27. Now that's not a negative 12, that's a positive 12. But we know that X minus negative 12 equals 27. So that means that X plus 12 also equals 27. So if we know that, then we know that if we take 27 and subtract 12, it's going to equal X. Minus 12 equals X. So we know that's a true statement, but in order to write a true fact family member, we have to use this value right here, and that's negative 12. So we have to rewrite this equation, 27 plus negative 12 equals X. Now, we've written the fact family that is related to this one that we started. But we still haven't determined what X equals. We've written it in a couple different ways, and that should help us find it. In fact, this one right here gives us a simple subtraction problem, 27 minus 12, and that would be 15. 27 minus 10 is 17, 27 minus 12 is 15, so X equals 15. If we replace this original X with 15, subtract negative 12 from 15, we get 27. Feel free to rewatch this portion of the video again if this one was a little tricky. But we started with X minus negative 12 equals 27. We simplified it to X plus 12 equals 27. And then that helped us find a fact family member. And then we could look at the easiest equation that we wrote and use that to find the value of X. Let's look at the next one. All right, find the distance between negative 9 and 16 on a number line. Go ahead and pause the video and see if you can draw a number line, or without drawing a number line, try to find the distance between negative 9 and 16 on the number line. Okay, I'm going to draw a little number line right here as a reference. And I'm not going to use each one of those hash marks because I think we can do this with simple addition. Here's 0, which is a really important part of any number line. And negative 9 is going to be somewhere, let's say negative 9 is somewhere down here. And then 16, let's say that's way up here. Now this is just a sketch of a number line. I didn't use marks to delineate each unit. I just know that there's negative 9, that there's an absolute value of 9 to the left of the 0 and an absolute value of 16 to the right of the 0. And I know that if I add these two absolute values together, I'm going to get the total distance between negative 9 and 16, and that's going to be 25. Because 9 plus 16 is 25, so there are 20 units between negative 9 and 16. Let's look at the next one. Okay, this one has 8 different integer expressions. When you pause the video this time, take a few minutes to write down each one of these on a piece of paper and see if you can come up with the correct answer for all of these. This will test your ability to determine what to do when you're adding negative numbers, when you're subtracting negative numbers, and when you're adding and subtracting numbers when you've started at a negative number. So there's a whole bunch of different examples here. Let's see if you can get all 8 correct. Pause the video now and take some time to try these out. All right, let's see how you did. So we have 18 minus 27. So you're starting above 0 at 18 and you're subtracting 27. So you are subtracting more units than you started with. So that means you're going to end up in the negative. And we know that there's 9 between 18 and 27. So this is going to leave us with a value of negative 9 for the first one. We know that 27 minus 18 equals 9, so that's going to be a positive 9. 15 plus negative 8. If you start at a positive 15 and you add a negative, you are losing value. So that's going to be like subtracting 8 from 15. And that gives us a positive 7. Now, if we start with negative 15 and we subtract a negative 8, now we're gaining in value. But we started at 15 below 0, so we're going up. We're going to go closer to 0, and that's going to give us an answer of negative 7. So far, so good. I hope so. If not, keep practicing. We have 4 more to try. Negative 6 minus negative 8. I'm back at the top of the next column. We're adding a negative. Once again, starting with a negative value, and we are, subtracting a negative. So negative 6 minus negative 8 is like adding a positive. So our value is going to increase because we're subtracting a negative. So negative 6 minus negative 8, that's going to give us a value of positive 2. Notice I didn't put the positive sign. All I had to do was write 2 to show that the value is positive. The next one is very similar. It's just the absolute values are reversed. So we're starting at negative 8 and we are subtracting a negative 6, which is going to increase the value. So it's like adding 6 to negative 8, which will bring us that much closer to 0 and has a value of negative 2. The next to last one is negative 6 plus negative 8. Now we're adding a negative to negative 6, adding negative 8 to negative 6. So we're starting at negative 6, we're adding a negative. That means our value is going to decrease. If we're adding negatives, that means we are doing the same thing as subtracting positives. So negative 6 plus negative 8 is going to be negative 14. We get that much further away from 0. We started at 6 below 0, we added negative 8, and we ended up further away from 0. And lastly, we start at 6 above 0 and add negative 8. We're doing the same thing. We're decreasing in value again. It's like subtracting 8 from 6. We're going to end up just below 0 at negative 2. Okay. Interesting. It would be really interesting to know how you did, and I encourage you, if you made any errors, to go back and watch the video again and see if you can fix your mistakes, or watch any portion of the video and see if you can fix your mistakes. Good luck, and contact me if you have any